DM2 Software's Vice President of Marketing. I would like to welcome everybody to today's Business Intelligence Part 2 Beyond the Basics webinar. Before I introduce today's presenter, I would like to go over a few housekeeping items. Because of the number of attendees we have on today's webinar, everyone's phones will stay on mute. If you have any questions during the webinar, please enter them into the chat window you see on the lower right of your screen. We'll try to answer everyone's questions at the end of the webinar. If we're unable to get to everyone's questions, we'll follow up with everyone individually after the webinar. Today's webinar is being recorded. As soon as the recording is available, we'll post it on the customer content page of our website and send you an email to let you know when it's available to be downloaded. On that note, I would like to introduce today's presenter, Rob Pierce, our Vice President of Professional Services. Take it away, Rob.
Thanks, Tom. Good afternoon, everyone. So today is the second half of a two-part series we're doing on business intelligence. In the first half, we kind of covered some key concepts and whatnot. The second one was really based purely on feedback from the audience out of the first one. And so we'll get into the agenda here just in a second. As always, I always like to do a little commercial. You guys have a great BI system already. MAS is the #1 ERP in the small medium business area. Sage CRM is as well. From a data warehouse perspective, most folks are using Microsoft SQL, professional grade, and Excel, of course, is the default winner in the whole data analysis user interface category. Microsoft just keeps adding more and more data analytic tools into it. Friendly, familiar, it's just hard to beat. So you guys pretty much already have this solution in place. I think the challenge people come to us with is, what do we do with it? How do we use it in ways to get more value out of our system? So that's kind of at the heart, the spirit of today's presentation. So jumping into the other side of that, generally 70% of all BI projects fail. And this is not a DM2 stat. This is from the Gartner Group. And when they looked into the top 3 reasons why that is, it really didn't have much to do with the tools or the IT deployment. It came back to, is there a linkage to a true business case? The purpose for most business intelligence is to try to get insight and make some kind of improvements in a business. And unless there's an understanding of what that core business case is, then it's very difficult to create an effective dashboard to support that business case. So that's really the theme behind today's presentation, is getting an understanding of what is a good business case, and then how do we transition from that into building an effective dashboard. Here's just a graphical representation of the same concept. We need to start with the foundation of the business case. If you don't have that locked down, then it's going to be very difficult to guess at what's an appropriate model and presentation. So our agenda today, we're going to do it through examples. We're going to have 2 examples. We're going to start with an e-billing business initiative. We're going to look at a sales coaching initiative using some CRM metrics. That'll be the majority of the presentation. And at the end, we're just going to share a couple of experimental projects we have going on. One's around customer retention using some new predictive analytics. It's very early experimental. We just want to expose it and get some feedback from customers who's interested, who would like to have some input into the future development. At the end of the first BI webinar we did, some folks were asking questions about web deployment. So I don't really have a solution, but I have something to share that maybe somebody in the audience would like to kind of take to the next level. All right, so what is a good business case? So a business case is just generally something, you're already doing it today, we're doing billing today, but we want to do something to streamline or make that business process better than it is. So one example is e-billing. We're printing out paper invoices today, but we want to start moving our customers over to electronic billing. Why do we want to do that? Because it can lower cost or increase capacity, revenue, profitability. Most of these business initiative projects, that savings or that revenue improvement is going to come either directly from the project or indirectly. So an example, an upgrade, you're probably more of an infrastructure investment. You're not going to get benefits directly from the upgrade. You're going to get them from all of the other kinds of projects that upgrade is going to allow you to do. And then the how, the tactical execution. So for example, moving customers from paper to e-billing, there's probably a lot of different ways you could go about that. But when you sit down and look at what are the resources we have, what are the skill sets, what are the tools, you come up with a specific execution plan that fits your company. And these three together, the what is the initiative, why are we doing it, and how are we going to go about doing it, that makes a solid business case. And once you understand that, then you're ready to begin building your BI dashboard. If we don't have this foundational understanding first, then we're probably just guessing at what we want to do for our analytics. So here we're going through the business case thought process for e-billing. We want to convert 100 customers a month from paper to e-billing, electronic billing, going out through DM2 Outbox. If we do that, we're going to spend less money on forms, envelopes, postage, toner, printers, spending the labor resources to fold and stuff, to put them in the filing cabinet, to go back and look them up in the filing cabinet, to go look for all the missing documents. So you think about all of these different things. Maybe you're outsourcing your printing. We're generally going to be saving labor in the billing cycle itself, as well as throughout other parts of the company. The amount of time that we spend on billing itself will be reduced because we're not waiting around for that printer to come off. We're not spending time stuffing envelopes. We're just pushing buttons and it's all going out electronically. So we're releasing capacity in our company instead of being constrained by how fast our printer is or how fast we could fold and stuff envelopes. Now we could double or triple the number of invoices we get out every day. And then as a result, there's some financial impact to that. We have more efficient working capital, our cash flow is improved, and we've improved our capacity. So we've had some customers actually go through this analysis, and they came back with what they considered a savings to be somewhere above $5 an invoice. They said for every customer that we're able to convert from paper over to electronic, when we look at across the entire enterprise, the ripple effects of cost savings and improvements, we're going to put a number on there about $5 an invoice. So our next step is putting a little ROI model together. So in this little sample model here, we're investing $2,000 in month 1, and we're going to put another $1,000 into this project every month. Because we're converting 100 customers per month, and I'm keeping it simple, 1 invoice per customer per month, we're going to save about $500 per month. And then this third line here is the accumulated ROI over time. So by the time we're done, we've put 13 into the project. We're getting 39 out, so we're netting about 26. 200%, that's a pretty decent ROI. This project sounds like it makes sense to move to the next step with. I get that this ROI model is really simplified, but that's kind of the sign of a good ROI model. You're not putting too much effort and analysis into it. We kind of rolled a lot of the benefits down into that $5 per invoice metric as opposed to trying to look at specific labor savings, for each individual job throughout the company. But just assume you're going to have a 20% plus or minus on it. So even if we were 20% over in our estimate, this still is a pretty good project. And the graph down here just shows it graphed out. Our costs are kind of flat from month to month at $1,000 per month. Our return is linear. We're getting an extra $500 a month. But the accumulated ROI, it's exponential. It builds on top of itself over time. And that's really the power of most automation or integration projects is that accumulated ROI. Not only do you get the incremental savings this month, but you get all of those savings you did the prior months as well. More and more, we're really trying to help our customers go through this ROI analysis. Is this project going to make sense? Is this a wise investment of our money? If you go through this and the dollar you invest in the project does not pay back more than $1 within a reasonable timeline, we're trying to encourage our customers to not do those kinds of projects. We'd be happy to work with you to look at other kinds of projects where if you're putting the money into them, you're going to get much more than that money back. So we're trying to move from this perception of being an expense, DM2, to being a positive investment you're going to get a nice return on. So now that we've defined the business case, and now we're thinking about how do we turn this into a real dashboard, there's several thought processes to go through. One I kind of like is this whole input, process, output format. So just think about what's going on in this particular case. We're going to do some email and phone calls to customers to try to get them to convert. So procedurally, we'll convert about 100 per month. We're doing that because we expect a full-time employee, the amount of labor in the billing cycle to go down. We expect the amount of time we spend on billing to go down. And we're doing all of this because we have some financial return on investment that we expect to get. It's not in today's presentation, but going through this, one customer said, I'll just look at my paper expenses. If my paper expenses are going down, I know we're on track. So I thought that was a really simple and effective way to get a good measurement that you're on track or not. So the next step, we've got a business case. We've done an ROI model. We think this thing makes financial sense to put some money into. So we're going to go through and build our mock-up. And this is the question you kind of want to hold yourself accountable to. Is this thing that we're designing really going to empower someone to make better decisions? Are they really going to be able to make any improvements in the company by using this tool? So as you're going through all your versions of mockups, you kind of just need to keep holding this question up to yourself over and over to hold yourself accountable to building something of value. So using my very expensive mockup software, I went out and I said, as kind of a higher level executive, I would be interested in knowing how many of my customers are on electronic billing versus paper. And I'd want to see that over time. So as we're moving through this business initiative, we're going through the months, calling these customers, it'd be interesting to see that pie chart evolve. We're also doing this because we expect the labor to decrease and the cycle time to decrease. Well, I would like to see some evidence of that actually happening. We put together that ROI model that kind of justified this project to begin with. So let's hold ourselves accountable to meeting that. So let's throw that little trend line up there. In this particular case, it's just a 12-month project, and there's only a handful of metrics involved. So rather than building a whole series of charts and graphs and whatnot, in this case, because it's such a limited data set, I could just present it as a simple table. So, you know, there's design principle one of a dashboard. When choosing among options, go with the most simple one. So after we have that little mock-up done, and it's usually going to take a few iterations to go through, then you start thinking about what are the data fields needed to back up that pie chart, to back up that trend line. And where are we going to get it from? Is it coming from a table inside the ERP? Is it coming from the CRM system? Is it coming from an outside data source? So you start to build your mock-up of your data model, and then from that, we can begin building the individual pivot tables. Once you've got your pivot tables in place, now you can start building your dashboard. This particular dashboard, it's built all with standard stock Excel tools. I'll just go to the next slide here. Well, let me explain it. So here's what we were talking about. Here's my entire customer base. This gray slice is showing how many have moved over to electronic billing, how many are remaining on paper. Here are the number of labor hours we're spending, sorry, down here, number of labor hours we're spending on the billing process per day. And this one is how long does it take, the cycle time. Over here is that ROI trend line we're talking about. And then down here is an overall view of the entire project. So every month, how many emails are we making, how many phone calls, how many are actually converting, what's that conversion efficiency, and here's some of the outcomes. So here's our monthly goal, here's how many actually converted, and then there's a few running metrics. How we thought we're going to do 100, but what did we actually do? And here's our accumulated running variance. So we kind of started out behind the ball. We were 16 short in the first month, and we were playing catch up over the following months, and we caught all the way up in the 7th month.
Rob, what's the source of the communication data that you have in there? Email, phone?
Yeah, there's a lot of places you could capture that. So you could do this if you have a CRM system. You could certainly put that into the CRM communication table itself, your activities. If you don't have Sage CRM, this is such a simple initiative. It could be as simple as capturing it in an outside spreadsheet.
Okay, great, thanks.
And then when you get to the converted, you could be looking at information in the customer master file, their billing type. There's lots of fields you could capture that kind of information inside the math side of it.
Okay.
So I was making the comment that this is really just a bunch of individual Excel techniques, and we're not going to go through those today. But if there's a demand for some Excel webinars, please email Tom or myself, and we'll put together some Excel function webinars. So the first one is slicers. That's what allows you to move through the different dates. The next one is good old pie chart. Most of you are probably familiar with that. Over here, these are just pivot table results with some shapes over the top of them just to highlight them, so it's more of an aesthetic thing. Here's good old line charts from pivot tables. This bottom guy here is nothing more than just a pivot table itself. It has some of those data analysis conditional formatting laid on top of it. So the data bars allow you real quickly to see the relative size of the data values. Conditional formatting, so some of the text was highlighted different colors based on some rules. And then these little status indicators, the red, green, yellow lights, those are just conditional icons, and you can establish what those rules are inside of Excel. So these are all standard Excel tools just combined to put together into a nice little tight dashboard. So to summarize this guy, the first thing we had to do is get the business case. What are we trying to achieve? Why are we doing this? What's the financial justification for it? And then we talked about how we're going to go about doing it. So the how is really the activity. It's important to have this really understood well, because without, well, I won't say without this, it's based on this that we then begin our dashboard. The inputs are going to tie to the activity. The point of the dashboard is to allow a business user to make changes in activity to make improvements in the company. The process ties to the what are we doing, and then the outputs were why are we doing this? What were the expected outcomes? Some non-financial improvements as well as some financial improvements. All right, we'll move into our second dashboard case. So this business case is sales coaching, which is becoming real popular. Kind of the main theory of sales coaching is, instead of as a sales manager being directive, why are you not meeting your sales, you move to a little bit more question-driven. It's more of a developmental approach for managing the sales team, where instead of purely holding people accountable for results, you're diving into the why are they not meeting results and helping develop skills specific for each individual. So the business case we have is sales effectiveness. And how we're going to do it is through coaching. Another important part, not only are we developing our staff to be more effective at doing sales, but there's an interesting stat out there, 70% of top reps, they say when they leave, it's based on the relationship with their sales manager. So what they found is companies who move through this sales coaching initiative, they're retaining their top talent. And this bottom part here was just an interesting quote I heard a while back. You can't manage a sale, you can only manage the activities in the sale. And that just resonated with the business case here. What we're trying to get down to is understanding what are the reps doing and then giving them some constructive feedback on how to do that better. So I know that not everybody on the audience today has CRM or is familiar with all the terms I'm going to use, so I just wanted to explain a couple quick concepts here. This is what's called a sales pipeline. So most sales reps are moving their sales opportunities through different stages of a pipeline, and we had a real simple one where they're qualifying a customer, doing a needs analysis, proposing, and then negotiating. So inside Sage CRM, you get to define what your sales process is, and all of these different layers of the pipeline represent those different stages of the process. And it takes different kinds of activities to move a customer, an opportunity from one stage to the next to ultimately closing that business, either winning it or losing it. So where are the possible coaching opportunities? What does a rep do? What are their activities? They're moving those sales opportunities through the pipeline, qualify, needs analysis, presentation, and so forth. We're giving a very simplified view of what sales management is today. It's much more complex, much more nuanced. You have new customer acquisition strategies, share of wallet growth strategies, retention strategies. It could vary by your customer segments, your industry segments, your product lines, your business lines. So in reality, it's much more complex than what we're presenting today, but the thought process is pretty much the same. You just need to apply it to more variables. So before we were looking at kind of that input, process, output model of how to design your dashboard. In this case, we're thinking of more of a drill down questioning model. So it might be interviewing that sales manager and saying, your goal is to find those coaching opportunities with your sales team. What's the thought process you go through? What are the questions that you ask yourself? And as he's asking those questions, if they're tied together in a sequence, kind of going through the layers, that's called a drill down. So in this case, the first thing he says he wants to understand is, do my reps have enough opportunity in each stage? Well, that's something we could write a query on. We could show what is the opportunity in each stage. Is the rep spending enough time on each stage? Again, I missed a key point back here. Inside these pipelines, not only does it tell you the number of opportunities in these individual stages, but it can also tell you how many gallons are on these opportunities, how many gallons is in this stage, how much gross margin potential is in this stage, how many activities are my reps spending on this stage, how many emails have we made, how many phone calls, how many appointments. So that's kind of the power of the CRM system, is it's capturing all that information at the opportunity level to allow you to get the insight into what's going on a per stage basis. Okay, so in this case, the sales manager wants insight into how much opportunity there is, gross margin-wise, and what kind of activity is taking place. Very simple. As we stated earlier, it's going to be more complex in the real world, to be more variables, but it's the same thought process, it's the same kind of measurements, you just apply them to more metrics inside the system. Then you can work through all your design mock-ups. The more complex your dashboard, the more iterations you're going to go through. You really want to spend time on this, because once you start going through and building your data models and building your dashboards, that's a much larger investment than just ripping off a new piece of paper and drawing up your next iteration. But expect to go through quite a few iterations as you're interviewing the sales manager, and they're thinking it through, and as you kind of bring the answer to one question, it could spur the next level of questioning. That's a perfectly normal process to go through, and just expect us to go through quite a few iterations. So in our case today, here's a very simple design. And again, if it's simple, that's a good thing. If it's complex, you're probably going to end up in that 70% category. But at the top, here's our pipeline metrics. So there's leads, qualify, needs, present, negotiate, and it ends in a win-close end. So by rep, I could see how much gross margin they have in all of these various stages of their pipeline. And down below, I could see the activity in those various stages of the pipeline. So Susan, in this case, she's closed more and won more business than Oscar has. And you can see she spent a lot more time negotiating and closing. And if you look at her dollars in her pipeline, she's depleted all of the dollars. A healthy pipeline, the sales manager decided there should be about $50,000 gross margin in your negotiating pipeline at all times. But Susan's closed it all. So she's depleted that stage of the pipeline without filling it. And you can see that represented in her activity. She's been spending all of her time closing and not spending much time in the stage right before. She hasn't been doing many presentations to get people into the negotiation stage. So Oscar, his pipeline, his dollars are a little bit more in alignment with what's expected up here in the title line. His activities kind of balanced across his pipeline. You should kind of expect Oscar to be doing consistent performance, closing about the same amount month to month, whereas Susan, she had a great month this month, but if I'm looking at what's in her pipeline and how she's spending her time, she's probably going to have some slow months coming up. So there's lots of, there's actionable intelligence here. Susan may need to spend a little bit more time fulfilling her pipeline, or maybe that's just her skill set. She's a closer. That's what she's really good at, and she's not great at qualifying or doing some of these other things. So do you want to invest the time in developing Susan to be a qualifier, or do you maybe want to partner her up with somebody else who's really good? So getting that insight from a sales manager perspective is going to help that sales manager be more effective at developing or reorganizing their team to get better performance. So in this case, the what we wanted to do was develop the sales team through coaching. Why? To grow their effectiveness and retain our top talent. How are we going to do it? By getting insight into the stage level granularity of gross margin activity, and then we have those coaching conversations. So our dashboard, there's our business case. Our dashboard really needed to be designed to support that business case. So it had to provide that insight to the sales manager so they could have those effective coaching dialogues to develop the talent and to retain. Some other common CRM questions that come up. I didn't have time in today's presentation. How are we doing on time?
We're doing good, Rob. We're about a half an hour in.
Great. Are we spending enough time with our high gross margin customers? That would come from the communications table. So inside CRM, that's the table that captures all the phone calls, all of the emails, all of the appointments we have with our customers. So if you marry that table up with sales debt, because sales debt has gross margin by customer, we could tell, are we spending enough time, are we having enough touches with our high margin customers? Another common request is, are we touching or spending enough time, not necessarily with the high margin customers, but with the customers or prospects that we think have the high growth potential. So maybe they're not doing a lot with us today, but we think there's a lot of potential for us to do more business with them. So again, the communications table is that hub of where we're capturing those touches and what kinds of touches and what were the results. Yeah, we made 3 phone calls, but we got voicemail 2 out of 3 times. You get that kind of visibility through a CRM system. And then where do we capture this potential? There's a lot of places to do that. You could do it at the company level inside CRM, start developing a profile of this prospect or a customer. You could do it inside opportunity table if you want. Some of our customers, because it's so easy to customize CRM, they're actually creating their own custom tabs to capture competitive intelligence and customer profile information. Okay, so we went through our 2 business cases, and now we're going to move into the experimental research, so a little look behind the curtains. This is early in its stages. It's not ready to be released. We've shared it with a couple customers, got some good feedback. They gave us some ideas on how to improve it, so we thought it was time to maybe expose it to a broader audience. And if anyone's interested in having some input into this, please contact me directly. My email will be at the end here. So the first one, we'll hold ourselves accountable to what we're preaching today on business case. So the business case here is that age-old question, who is leaving? And probably more importantly, getting this information, being aware of who's on their way out in time to do something about it. A lot of the metrics out there show you, this customer bought X gallons last quarter, but they bought 0 this month. By that point in time, it may be too late to do anything about it. But if we had some earlier visibility, we might have been able to go out there and proactively take some retention measures. Another dynamic that's kind of going on out there, if you think about this, the battle for all or nothing of a customer is shifting a little bit to wallet share. So a common sales technique, so all you guys in sales this will resonate with you. It's tough to go out and just steal a customer's full business, a large customer. So a sales tactic is to go in and say, well, give us 20% of your business, let us prove ourselves, let us show you that we can do better service, and maybe we could earn a greater share of your business over time. So that's a very real sales tactic out there, and it's great from the customer's buying side as well. It's smart on their side not to put all their eggs in one basket. They're spreading their purchasing risk across multiple suppliers. So more and more, this seems to be the dynamic. This phenomenon where your wallet share is eroding slowly over time, it's called silent attrition. So that gradual loss of wallet share over time. From an analytical point of view, it's very difficult to see that subtle decline over time, because customers may not be buying the same way that you analyze your data. If you're comparing this month to that month or this quarter to that quarter, you may catch some customers, but there's probably quite a few that may not be buying on that exact same pattern. So our challenge that we were kind of holding ourselves accountable to in this business case, the question, who is leaving us, is to find something where the data could speak up and let you know, hey guys, you've got a competitor taking your business. At this particular account, it's going on right now. So we talked to some customers, and a couple customers with the initial prototype, and they were saying, I don't want to go digging through 5,000 records trying to find these needles in the haystack. I really want the software just to tell me who are my top 10, bottom 10 customers. So in this particular example, it's focused on gallon changes. So the customer's last purchase compared to the average of their prior 4 purchases, how are the gallons trending? Are they buying more or less? So in this case, the customer's last purchase, he bought 2,000 gallons less than he did on the average of the 4 previous purchases. And you have the ability to slice it, down by sales rep, by business line. There's quite a few other dimensions on how you can organize the data. But the key point is the data is presenting to you very easily who is on their way out. Equally important is who's growing. If one of your customers just made an acquisition, it's equally important to understand that and go have a conversation with that customer and see what the opportunities are there as well. So this whole predictive analytic concept is based on the fact that customers can buy on patterns. So not all of your customers are buying on these predictive patterns, but if you go through an analysis, you probably find that there is a large segment of them are buying on patterns. And it just makes sense. Just like you guys have on-hand quantities you're trying to maintain, you've got minimum order quantities, economic order quantities, you've got inventory budgets you're trying to maintain. All of that's true for your customers as well. So it makes sense that they're buying on some kind of a pattern. One of the key shifts of this tool is that it's based on customer buying behavior as opposed to our selling behavior. Most of the analytics we have today are saying, what did we sell this month versus last month? What did we sell this week versus last week or quarter to quarter? It's our period over period comparison. What this tool is doing is it's not focused on any date parameters. It's focused on customer activity. The customer, specifically the customer's last 4 purchases, regardless of what time span that covered. So the unit of analysis is not a single transaction, it's a block of customer data, because you need those 4 pieces across several metrics to be able to even find a pattern. You need more than a single transaction to get a pattern. This is a subset of the data that's in this analysis tool. It's kind of at the heart of where the pattern is. So each customer product combination has their last 4 invoice numbers. I have them grayed out here. The last 4 invoice dates, the days, the intervals between those purchases, the actual gallons of those last 4 purchases, the actual cents per gallon in those purchases, and the actual gross margin of those purchases. So that forms the basis of information to start developing some patterns. Also included is the days since the last purchase. So this customer buys on a 24.5-day pattern. It's 17 days since they made their last purchase. So just using some good old math out here is done in Excel. That means this guy's due in 8 days. So in this little sample here, we ran it sometime in May. So from the day we ran it, 17 days since they last purchased in May, we know he's going to buy 8 days away. That day, his predicted next purchase is going to be June 2nd. We predict he's going to buy 1,200 gallons at this cents per gallon, and this is what we predict the gross margin is going to be. That data set is what's at the heart of us being able to run these different kinds of presentations on it. And we have 2 here that we were just playing around with, but there's probably many other presentation formats we could come with. This one just made it really easy to pop the top and bottom 10. I could run it on cents per gallon changes, gallon changes, gross margin changes, or even the days interval changes. This is another presentation on the exact same data set. So in this one, we've got our list of customers running down the left. Across the left to right horizon here, we've got, I'm trying to think of a way to say it, how close are they to being ready to buy? So for example, someone who's 50%, this means they're halfway through their pattern. So if it's a customer who is on a 10-day pattern, this means he's on day 5. If it's a customer who's on a 50-day pattern, this means he's on day 25. So he's halfway being ready to buy. So what are the implications of this? There's several. If we're calling our customers when they're in the 10 to 40% range, they're not ready to buy. So it's probably not going to be a very productive sales call, maybe a little bit more of an annoyance. But if you call that customer when they're 70 to 90% ready to buy, they're ready to buy. That call has now become customer service. Thank goodness you called. I do need product. That opens the door for cross-selling opportunities. You're going to get a much more receptive buying customer here. Also in this presentation, you can see who's slipping past. This guy here's where they're due at 100%. That's when they're buying on the normal pattern. But if their days interval is slipping past, you're going to start getting visibility into that. This guy's 20% over his normal pattern. Why is that? That's a call to action. You can do something about that. And then this top to bottom sort, it's sorted in gross margin. So our highest gross margin customers are at the top, least gross margin at the bottom. So if I had 50 customers slipping into this 120% category, as I'm making my calls, I could prioritize it on who's got the most margin. Both of those 2 presentations we showed, the top bottom or that timeline presentation, they both have drill down capabilities. So if we were to double click on either the gallon changes or the percentage, they would present the full underlying data set behind them. So this is just like sales vet. You got all these pivot tables, you double click on something of interest, and it presents the full detail of the record behind it. Who's the customer, what's the product, what's the date, the invoice date, the cost, the margin, everything you need to understand that. What's different here, though, is it doesn't give you the single transaction. It gives you the full block of data. So it's going to tell me the last 4 invoices, the last 4 invoice dates, all that interval information we were talking about. It's handing you the full story behind this customer, not just a single transaction. Okay, so that's what we had to show today on this pattern recognition customer retention tool. We think we've got something here. The early feedback is really positive. If other customers want to participate in this, we're happy to spend some one-on-one time with you, listen to your input. We want more customer feedback to help move the direction and development of this product. Again, my email is going to be at the end of this presentation, so just email me directly, and we'll start engaging you on a one-on-one basis. Okay, at the last of our first presentation, are we done time?
We're doing great, Rev. We've got about 20 minutes left.
Okay. The question came out, what about web deployment? We were showing some Excel dashboards, and people were asking about web deployment. Excel has built-in HTML export capabilities. In fact, there's something called mHTML, so that as you save your spreadsheet, it'll actually republish the HTML. The downside to that, though, is from the consumer's perspective, that dashboard is static. They can't do anything with it. So we were playing around with some stuff recently and came across, well, let me just pop out. Okay, some of you may be familiar with Microsoft SkyDrive. It's been around for quite a while, but they just relaunched it in April this year. And what it basically is, I could have my Excel on my local machine, on my laptop, and on my laptop I've got what's called a SkyDrive folder. So I could save my Excel spreadsheet in that local SkyDrive folder, and when I do that, it's automatically syncing up to the cloud, to the Microsoft Cloud SkyDrive account. And up inside SkyDrive, I can have web app versions of Excel. So you guys saw the Excel local copy I had. This is a web app version of Excel, and it fully works. It's just been a while since I've been out. So I'm clicking on my slicers, and you can see the slice, showing how many electronic customers versus paper. And if I move down a few more months, you can see that we made some progress. We converted a few more people. If you look at the cycle time and the number of employees from this month to that month, you could see them change. So it's interactive. We're up in the web. It's cloud-based. It's browser-based. It was completely driven from all that work I did on my local machine, and it works. One of the options in this tool is I could share it with other people, but you could also create embed code. So what that embed code allows you to do is put that embedding code into any web page you want, so that those web pages can now run this active spreadsheet. So there's part of the story. Now we move over to Sage CRM. Sage CRM is a browser-based application. I could run it up in the cloud. I could be fully mobile. It is a browser-based CRM solution. One of the things you could do with it, the stock standard customization features, is you could create your own tabs. When you create your own tab, it asks you, what do you want to do with this tab? How are you going to use it? One of those options is to create it as an ASP page. So our IT guy, I think he did this in about a half hour. He created it as an ASP page. He took that embedded code from Microsoft SkyDrive, and he embedded his Excel or my Excel spreadsheet into the CRM system. And again, it's probably going to time out on me because we haven't been on here for a while. So it just refreshed. The point I want to show is, though, this is not a static HTML representation. This is a functioning, interactive Excel web application. So I'm running Microsoft Excel through my browser and CRM. I'm running that SkyDrive version of Microsoft Excel. And that Microsoft, so I guess I need to move back to the presentation to get this point across. My on-premise, okay, so let's start at the beginning. Sage 100, so this is your Sage Mass. They're rebranding into Sage 100. So this is your ERP system. It's automatically syncing with your data warehouse. Your data warehouse is synced up to your version of Excel. Your Excel can now be automatically syncing up to the cloud, to the SkyDrive. Now I've taken that embedded code and put it into your CRM. So we've just made a full trip for business intelligence. I've got data feeding out of my ERP, even feeding out of the CRM system, into my data warehouse, into my local Excel, up to the SkyDrive, and being presented in a fully interactive functioning worksheet inside Sage CRM. Okay, we just stumbled on this like last week. We have done no experiments with it. I have no idea what happens if a customer were to put this on their system. How does it scale? What are the security concerns? We've done nothing beyond just play with it like we did today. So if there is someone interested in doing something with this, again, please email Rob, and I'll donate some time to this effort because I'm really curious how far this could go. So if someone's interested in taking this to the next level, please email me and I'll work with you and we'll see what it takes to turn this into a real solution. If anyone's interested, so that ends the content for today, but if anyone's interested in forming a DM2 BI community, here's my email. I've got a couple consultants. You guys might know Shelley Lincoln and Aaron Leali. They're really good in this area. I would like to participate. So if we get enough customers interested in having an active, ongoing user group around the topic of business intelligence, we would be interested in getting that going as well. Tom?
All right, thanks, Rob. Excellent job. Before we go into the Q&A portion of the webinar, I'd like to invite everybody to mark this on their calendars. Next month on October 11th, we're going to have another webinar. And this webinar is going to cover our new web link interface and our partnership with Website Pipeline with their web portal. And this will give you an opportunity to see how this solution can be used to leverage your website to give your customers and dealers access to their information anytime, anywhere, through any web browser. And I'll be sending out an invitation with all the registration information shortly after this webinar ends. And now we'll go to the Q&A session. It looks like we've got one question so far from Angie over at Downs, and she is asking what version of CRM and or DM2 do you need to create this dashboard, or these dashboards that you presented, Rob?
Well, I mean, creating the dashboards is just in Excel. We've been doing dashboards generally through the sales data warehouse for 4 or 5 years. Maybe, Angie, can you type in what specific dashboard? We could do it with any version of CRM. We could do it with any version of Mass, any version of Excel. It's just more of a question of which capabilities you're talking about.
She's interested in the last one.
So we did that putting the web app inside the CRM. We did that on a local copy of 6.2, which was the first version of CRM that we came out with. So you don't need a more modern version to do that. Now, the Excel I was using was 2010. I think you have to be on Excel 2010 in order to have that sync with Microsoft SkyDrive.
Okay, thanks, Rob. That looks like all the questions we've got for now. Why don't we give it another minute to see if anybody else. Oh, here we go. This is from Tammy. She's asking. We have Mass 200 version 4.3. Is CRM a different system or an add-on to Mass? Can you create dashboards without CRM?
So yes, we can create dashboards purely off of the Mass tables themselves. So sales data is an example. It has a lot of sales analytics. We've been doing that for years and years. So you can have a data warehouse coming purely off your ERP and nothing else. CRM is a separate application. It's a little bit more than just an add-on module. It can run standalone, but because Sage creates both the CRM system and the ERP, they've also designed the integration engine that lets them to talk to each other. So it's a way to integrate your front office sales team with your back office accounting package.
Okay. All right, we got a thank you from Angie. And we'll leave it open for another minute here. Any more questions, feel free to enter them into the question chat window. And as I said earlier, if, I know this is a lot of information. If you think of any questions afterwards, feel free to email Rob, myself, or you can send them to sales@dm2.com, and we'll make sure that we follow up with everyone. All right, that looks like all the questions we're getting for now. So I just want to remind everybody that today's webinar has been recorded. Once the recording is available, we'll have it posted on the customer content page of our website. We'll also include a copy of the PowerPoint presentation that Rob presented here, and I'll send an email out with the information on how to link to those and download those. And as I said before, if you think of any questions after today's webinar, feel free to email us. And I want to thank Rob for doing a great job. Some really good tools that he presented, and some insight into what we're thinking about for the future. And on that note, I'd like to thank everybody for attending today's webinar.
Thanks, everyone.